Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, and today we're going to talk about UFC Perth, Carlos Ulberg versus Dominick Reyes. And my friends, it's going down this Saturday night live at the RAC Arena in Perth, Western Australia. You got top 5 light heavyweight Carlos Ulberg taking on the former title challenger, the man that gave John Jones his toughest test, Dominick Reyes. And the winner could be facing off with Magomed Ankalaev or Alex Pereira next year. So my friends, without further ado, let's get right down to business. Because in this main event, we got a matchup between Carlos Ulberg, he's 12-1, taking on Dominick Reyes, who is 15-4. Currently, they got it Carlos Ulberg -250. The comeback on Dominick the Devastator Reyes is +210. Ulberg's 34, Reyes is 35. Both men are 6'4", and both men have a 77-inch reach. So this should be a hell of a matchup. Obviously, like we mentioned, most likely a title contender, most likely a title eliminator. And I gotta tip my cap, not my proverbial cap, my actual cap to Dominick Reyes for this career resurgence, because I did not see this coming from a mile away. I mean, like, when dudes get knocked the you-know-what out 3 fights in a row, I mean, did y'all think that he would like bounce back and make it to a #1 contender fight? I sure as hell didn't. But I do want to, look, I don't want to downplay the wins by any means, because when you're coming off 4 losses in a row, dude, you just need to taste victory. It doesn't matter who's in front of you, right? That's called getting someone back on track. And that's basically what he's been doing, you know? But again, that being said, I can downplay the wins all I want, but I picked Jacoby. I picked Nikita Krylov. Of course, I didn't pick Anthony Smith. I mean, if you picked Anthony Smith to beat Dominick Reyes, you probably shouldn't be picking fights. But no, but all jokes aside, the only one of those 3 fights that I thought Reyes was going to win was the Anthony Smith fight, because it's like, you know, if you haven't figured out how to beat Anthony Smith yet, there's a big issue. But listen, Reyes, in his initial run before the big skid, obviously from that southpaw stance, he's got that devastating left hand, but he also has a bit of volume. He's got some good point fighting abilities. You know, he's got a couple common opponents with Ulberg, one of them being Volkan Oezdemir. And, you know, at the time, I don't know if a lot of y'all remember, I remember a lot of people thought that Volkan Oezdemir got robbed against Dominick Reyes. Now, I'm not willing to really plant my flag on that, but what I will say is that one takeaway I had in that fight was Reyes has very good point fighting ability. Then you move to the John Jones fight, and I know everyone thinks that's like one of the biggest robberies they've ever seen. I'm not really willing to, you know, to make that argument, but the argument I'm absolutely willing to make is that Dominick Reyes gave John Jones his toughest fight, bar none. I mean, the first 2 rounds went to Reyes, rounds 4 and 5 went to Jones. All comes down to how you score round 3. Now, personally, I scored it for Jones, but like, this guy pushed John Jones to the brink, to his limits. And, you know, that fight had an emotional toll on Dominick Reyes, because after that fight, in his subsequent fights, you know, where he started getting knocked out every fight, all he would talk about at his media days was John Jones. And it was like weighing so heavily on his mind that it seems like he wasn't living in the moment. He wasn't in the present anymore. And he took the time off that was necessary. And it seems like this guy's got his head on straight. It seems like, look, this guy's not talking about getting robbed by John Jones anymore. This guy's not, you know, doing all these things. It seems like his head's in the right spot. He's finally back to the guy he was. And as a result, he's got this showdown against Carlos Ulberg. Now, on the other side with Ulberg, I'm a big fan of his style. Look, I know a lot of people don't like his last 2 fights, but here's the thing about it. Let's break them both down. The Volkan Oezdemir fight. Here's the thing you got to understand about Carlos Ulberg. He's mainly a counter fighter, right? If you're not going to push the issue on him, he's not going to push the issue on you. He's a very, very patient guy. He'll outpatient anybody, right? He only engages on his terms. I love that about him. Also, his left hook has to be the best left hook in the light heavyweight division besides Alex. And I talk about it every single Carlos Ulberg breakdown, and I'm going to keep talking about it. Dude, the way he knocked out Nikolai Negumariano, oh my God, that is one of the cleanest combinations in UFC light heavyweight history. Come at me. You know what I mean? Like, dude, hits him with a jab, takes a slight step back, and then boom, hits him with that left hook. Beautiful stuff. So as he stepped up in competition, the fans have been kind of mentioning that, look, his last couple fights were kind of boring. So like we were talking about with that Volkan Ozdemir fight, I didn't find it boring. Now the Jan fight we'll talk about in a sec, but let's talk about the Volkan fight first. Volkan didn't want to engage with Carlos Ulberg, and Carlos Ulberg still went out there and jabbed this dude's face off for 3 straight rounds and just put a clinic on him. Like, the way dudes get knocked out against Ulberg is when they take big risks against Ulberg. Like Menefield, like what the hell was Menefield doing, right? Like, if you want to charge Ulberg, you're going to get knocked you're going to get knocked the fuck out. Screw it, man. Screw it. I'm going to say it. You're going to get knocked the fuck out if you charge Ulberg recklessly. Let's talk about Ulberg's loss against Kennedy and Zechiku. So that fight was very different than all of Ulberg's other fights. Not because he lost, but up until he got caught, his approach was different. He was undefeated at the time. He thought he was God's gift to fighting. He's literally walking Kennedy down without a care in the world. I mean, I believe he threw over 300 strikes in less than two completed rounds. So like, he gassed himself out from whooping on Kennedy. Kennedy ends up catching him. And since that point, you've just seen a maturity from Ulberg. I mean, the guy's on an 8-fight win streak. Now, back to the last 2 fights, right? So we talked about the Volkan fight. I was impressed with that fight. I mean, when you mark a man's face up for 3 straight rounds, how am I going to hold that against you? The Jan fight. Now, I agree with y'all. The Jan fight was definitely boring as hell. But again, back to the main point here. If you don't want to take a risk against Ulberg, he's not going to put himself in harm's way just to please the crowd. But if you want to close the distance and come after Ulberg, he'll be very happy to oblige you with a nasty left hook counter. Now, Jan is, Jan's like 41, 42, and he's probably one of the smartest fighters in that division. To see how he's maturing with age, had a draw with Ankalaev, had a close split decision with Alex Pereira, and then obviously a very close fight against Carlos Ulberg too. So even though Jan is up there in age, it seems like Jan still got it. And not to mention, let's not forget what Jan did to Mr. Reyes for the undisputed light heavyweight title, because I haven't forgotten. Big body kicks, big counters, and I think those exact same tools can be weapons here. Now, Ulberg's history against southpaws in the UFC is 2-1. The one fight he lost, obviously the Kennedy fight, and it's like he looked great in that fight. He just, made a rookie mistake, dude. Like, it happens to tons of fighters, He literally thought that he could walk. Dude, the guy's nickname was Ladies Night when he first came into the UFC. Now it's Black Jack, but like, I'm just saying, like, this dude was arrogant. This dude was cocky. This guy thought that, like, I touch these guys one time and they go down, So he had to learn a very valuable lesson in that loss to Kennedy. But since that point, he's fought 2 southpaws. Now, granted, the 2 southpaws he's fought since Kennedy, let's just call it how it is. They both suck, but he treated them like they suck. Okay. Ihor Potieria, I was at that fight in I believe South Carolina, North Carolina, something like that. Knocks him out easily in the first round. Now, the other one was the Fabio Charant fight. Now, that fight sucked, but it was an easy 30-27. I bet on Ulberg there at -200. Again, why did that fight suck? Do you guys understand yet? I think y'all know why that fight sucked, but if you don't, I'm going to explain to you why that fight sucked. That fight sucked because Fabio Charant ran away from Ulberg the entire fight. If you run away from Ulberg, like I told y'all 100 times, Ulberg ain't going to chase you. Ulberg ain't going to take some stupid risks. Like, Ulberg's like, all right, like, once you decide to come at me, that's when I'm going to let my combinations go. So, the combinations were few and far between in that fight, but like, he still outstruck the guy like by a significant margin and easily won. But since that point, he hasn't fought any southpaw. So now he's going to go up against Reyes. Look, I have to tip my cap to Reyes. I got to show him a lot of respect. The fact that you've bounced back the way you have, it's inspirational. It's impressive. You're the man. But I think we're getting back to reality Saturday night, because like, when you think about this current run that Reyes is on, listen, I got a lot of love for Dustin Jacoby too, but we all kind of know Dustin Jacoby's on his way out. Anthony Smith, come on, man. Let's not even talk about that. And then Nikita Krylov. Man, I love Nikita Krylov, but Nikita Krylov got old overnight. Y'all know that. So Reyes is going to be tested against someone that's in their prime right now. I heard people being like, Ulberg's old. Are you fucking dumb? Sorry, excuse me. Like, dude, I can't believe some of the shit I'm hearing people say. It's like, The dude's 34. This is 205, guys. This is not 135. This is not 125. This isn't even 145. This is 205. How can you say that Ulberg's too old? Bro, wasn't Alex Pereira just the champion for like 2 years? Dude's like 36, 37. What are y'all talking about? Now, I'm not coming at the people that aren't saying, you know, that dumbass shit, but the people that are using Ulberg's age against him, what? Dude, under 170 pounds, okay. But 205, you're going to use that shit against him? Like Jonah Hill cut? So all that being said, this fight comes down to, at what point does Reyes decide to close the distance? Because there's going to be moments where they're both patient, they're both waiting, they're both feinting, they're both like, hey, you make a move, I don't want to make a move, you go first, you know? So I think Ulberg is so good at that patience battle, and eventually he's going to frustrate Reyes and get Reyes to take an unfortunate move, and from there, I think Ulberg's going to win via left hook knockout at UFC Perth. Co-main event of the evening, also in the light heavyweight division. We got Jimmy the Brute Crute. He's 13-4-2, taking on Ivan Erslan, who's 14-5. Currently, they got it, Jimmy the Brute Crute, minus 185. The comeback on Ivan Erslan is plus 160. Jimmy is still only 29. Ivan is 33. Both men are 6'2", and Jimmy is going to have a 1.5 inch reach advantage at 74 inches of reach. So, man, I feel like we've been to hell and back with Jimmy the Brute Crute. It's wild. The dude's not even 30. He's already retired. He's, you know, had his ups, he's had his downs, and I'm happy to see the guy back on track. You know, low-key, I thought he beat Bellato a fight ago. So in my book, in my humble opinion, he's on a 2-fight win streak. So I'm happy for Crute getting back on track. And also, I think a big thing for him is the mental game has elevated tremendously. You know, one big change he made is that he really leaned into religion and faith. And with certain guys, usually that's kind of a hit or miss situation. With some guys, it can just make them feel free. Like, man, like I can just go out there and perform, you know, no pressure on my shoulders. So in those cases, you love to see it. But then you've seen some other cases, kind of like Rory McDonald, when he got like ultra religious, it kind of softened him up a little bit. But it seems like in Crute's case, I mean, his last 2 fights, if there's any indication, seems like he's got his mind right. So I'm super happy for Jimmy the Brute Crute. Now, Ivan Erslan, I know he's 0-2 in the UFC, but I think he's better than what he's shown. You know, I kind of describe his style kind of like a white Jimmy Manawa. You know, he likes to trade devastating blows in the pocket. And obviously his wrestling ain't the best, his ground game ain't the best, but it's also not the worst, right? It's gotten better, it's improving, but like it's definitely a weakness in his game. He's been taken out in both his UFC fights. He's also had his back taken in both his UFC fights. And we know that Jimmy the Brute Crute, if he fights smart, he's probably going to get this fight down in the first round. Now, here's kind of my thing though. Anytime lately, not back in the day, but lately, anytime Jimmy's been past round 1, stuff has gotten extremely sketchy, my friends. And even in round 1 in some of these fights, like when you're getting finished in the first round by the ghost of Misha Serkinov, when you're getting finished in the first round by the ghost of Anthony Smith, when you're getting finished in the first round by Alonzo Menefield, like, guys, I have a lot of concerns with Jimmy the Brute Crute. I love Jimmy Crute, man, because like when I first scouted him before he was in the UFC and I saw this guy go 5 rounds on his regional scene, Hex, when he was the light heavyweight champion, and like he looked very, very promising. I don't know what happens in the UFC every time he goes past round 1, he gets so damn gassed, so damn fatigued. And if he can't run through Erslan on the mat here, then I think Erslan has a chance in that second and third round. So let's look at these props real quick. I'm curious what they say, because obviously Jimmy the Brute Crute is a serious black belt, and he's been a black belt for a hot minute. We've also seen, like I said, Ivan Erslan get taken down in both his UFC fights and get his back taken. So Crute by submission, Crute by submission is plus 265. Crute by TKO is also plus 265. So y'all want to know something ridiculous? So Crute inside is plus 105, but Crute by KO is 265 and Crute by sub is 265. So I'm just saying. Now, Erslan inside is plus 185. I doubt Erslan submits him, but Erslan by KO is plus 235. So listen, watch this be a 3-round war now, but I think that a Crute first round sub plus 265 or an Erslan KO plus 235, I don't think those are the worst moves. And look, Crute in round 1 is also plus 265. So if you think he's going to win by sub, I would just take the sub. Fuck the round 1. I mean, it's the exact same price. So if he happens to get a second or third round sub, which, hey, he submitted Paul Craig in round 3, that price will cover you. So I think that's probably the way to go. I mean, look, it's kind of unpredictable when you're talking about Jimmy the Brute Crute, man. It just is, bro. So I think Ivan has a chance if he can weather that early storm. I'm just not convinced he weathers that early storm. So I'm going to have to go Jimmy the Brute Crute by first round submission. But if I see him huffing and puffing and I see that Ivan Erslan survives that first round, it might make for a good live betting opportunity. But before the fact, pre-fight, I'll go with Jimmy the Brute Crute to win this fight. Featured bout in the featherweight division. We got a matchup between Jack Jenkins, he's 13-4, taking out Ramon Taveras, who's 10-3. Currently, they got it Jack Jenkins minus 280. The comeback on Ramon Taveras is plus 240. Both men are 31. Taveras is an inch taller at 5'8", and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage at 70 inches of reach. Man, I'm not actually sure that Jack Jenkins is really only 5'7". Why did I think this guy was like 5'9"? We'll have to see how they look on the face-off, but I swear Jenkins is probably a little bit taller, but either way, that doesn't matter here. What matters is this is a matchup between two strikers. However, they're vastly different. Jenkins, big leg kicks. Taveras, big hands. And that is the big dynamic. But there's a narrative that I have to bring up, and that is that Jenkins is coming off a serious injury. And I'm not talking about that fight against Chepe where he like blew out his shoulder or whatever. He already came back from that. I'm talking about his fight against Gabriel Moscatinho Santos. Do y'all know what happened in that fight? Did y'all read the article? Let me pull it up and read to you what happened to this man in that fight. So I'm reading the article. The 31-year-old reportedly suffered an injury in the first round of the fight with fractured cartilage in his thyroid cartilage, leading to an air leak. Look, bro, I'm not a doctor, but that sounds fucking terrible. It also says Jenkins told his corner at the end of the opening 5 minutes of the bout that he couldn't feel his left arm, which significantly impacted the remainder of the fight. It also says after spending some time under supervision in the intensive care unit, the featherweight fighter was released from the hospital, and now he's issued a brief statement to give his fans an update after a scary ordeal. So let's read a statement. I'm out the hospital at home now and will make a full recovery. Thanks for all the messages. When I started, I thought my career might be like Black Caviar, but now I think it's going to be more like God's Own in the 05 Guinness. Tough. So look, he's got a great sense of humor. He's making light of it, but like an air leak in your thyroid cartilage, like, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know shit about shit, but that sounds fucking terrible. That sounds massive. And that's the literal fight after he blew his shoulder out against Chepe Mariscal. So the reason I got to bring that up is because he's minus 280 in this fight. Now, if he shows up like himself, then minus 280 is justified. But if he at all is not the same Jack Jenkins that we've seen up until this point because he had a major injury, then who knows what could happen here. But if I'm getting the Jack Jenkins that I scouted on tape, listen, Ramon Taveras is way too heavy on that lead leg. I mean, you know, he's a boxer for MMA. You know what that means? That means that he's very firm in his stance. We know that Jack Jenkins has sent multiple people to the hospital with leg breaks. It's crazy. It's like every Jack Jenkins fight, someone goes to the hospital. Either he sends you to the hospital by breaking your leg, or you send him to the hospital, you know, fucking blowing out his shoulder with a judo throw or thyroid air leak cartilage. Like, bro, like what is going on with Jack Jenkins, man? I'm gonna say a prayer for him, bro, that he stays healthy, because like it's just, you don't want to see these young guys like going through these kind of things, man. Look, if he comes back like himself, I think he's gonna pick apart Ramon Taveras. If he doesn't come back like himself, Ramon Taveras swings big. Ramon Taveras has fast hands. But, man, I kind of think Ramon Taveras is a bit on the chinny side. I think that Ramon Taveras has a lot of questions to be answered about his ground game. I think his volume's on the tremendously lower side. And I think he's going to have a really tough time checking leg kicks. So all paths, you know, all roads lead to a Jack Jenkins victory, except the big question of, is he going to be the same guy after that major injury? If he's the same guy after that injury, I think he beats Ramon Taveras with some devastating leg kicks. Next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Jake Matthews, he's 22-7, taking on Neil Magny, who's 30-13. Currently, they got it Jake Matthews minus 410. The comeback on Neil Magny is plus 310. Jake is 31. Neil is 38. Neil is 6'3", Jake is 5'11", and Neil's going to have a 7-inch reach advantage at 80 inches of reach. So these are two longtime vets, and it's cool that they're finally matching up. You know, when you talk about Jake Matthews, you're talking about a guy that's been in the UFC since he was 19 years old, since he was a literal kid. He's been under the magnifying glass. We had to see him grow up in front of our eyes. And finally, at 31 years of age, it seems like he's actually putting it together. Now, I've said in the past, it seemed like Jake was putting it together, like when he fought Li Jingliang, like, oh my God, the clinic he put on Li Jingliang back then, this was a prime Li Jingliang. This ain't, washed up Li Jingliang that we see today. And back then it was like, okay, maybe now Jake is turning the corner. Nope, he wasn't. But now it really does seem that way. So hopefully that's the case. And with Neil Magny, I mean, dude, he's such an opportunistic, crafty vet. He's awkward. He's long. He'll be losing the entire fight until he turns things around, like in that Malott fight and that Zaleski fight. It's ridiculous how he finds ways to win. But, man, if Jake fights smart, I think that not only can he beat Neil Magny, but I think he can come out here and destroy Neil Magny. I think that leg kicks are going to be massive here. Eventually you start to chop down Neil, then you go upstairs with something. I think if Jake gets on top of Neil, there's going to be issues for Neil. It's just that if Jake, puts Neil through the ringer and Neil's still there and Jake starts to huff and puff, starts to question himself a bit, that's where Magny can take over, start, getting him in the clinch, start firing those knees, maybe a body lock takedown. It's just that Jake is so experienced at this point that I don't think he's going to make that dumbass mistake. That's what this fight comes down to in my mind. But Jake has came through as a big favorite in spots like this before, actually against Diego Sanchez back in the day. He was an even bigger favorite. He was like minus 1,200 there, easy 30-27. Now, I mean, it's been like 5 years since then or something? Like, it seems like he's really coming into his own. So unless Jake pulls a stunt, but I feel like Jake's gotten all the stunts out of his system over the years, man. As long as Jake doesn't pull a stunt, I think he's going to come out here, and I think he's going to knock out Neil Magny. Next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Justin Tafa. He's 7-5, welcoming Louie Sutherland to the UFC. He was 10-3. Currently, they got it a pick 'em with a slight lean on Tafa at minus 115 with Louie Sutherland at minus 105. Both men are 31. Sutherland's 3 inches taller at 6'3", and he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage at 76 inches of reach. So welcome to the UFC, Louie Sutherland. He's repping Scotland. He's a lot of fun. He's kind of a fat heavyweight, but he's not the fattest heavyweight I've ever seen, but he's definitely on the fatter side. But listen, man, you might look at him on paper and think certain things, but when he's in there, he's pretty effective. Decent combos. I love his knees, and he's a decently well-rounded guy, but he mostly looks to strike. And dude, y'all got to pull up the first fight he had with this dude named Brito. Like, Brito was this obese dude, like looked like he was 9 months pregnant. And Brito went out there and threw like a capoeira spinning kick to the head. Like, I'm glad Sutherland got out the way, but I was like, damn, I didn't know a bag of milk could throw a kick that high. But Sutherland knocked that dude out. Then he fought him again a couple fights later, knocked him out again. And the second time he knocked him out, he hurt him on the feet. He actually got a nice little single leg takedown and then pounded him out on the ground. Actually, that was his most recent fight where he got that single leg, if I remember correctly. But basically, Sutherland, he doesn't look to push the issue with the grappling. I mean, he'll grapple from time to time, don't get me wrong, and he's definitely more likely to go for a takedown than Justin Tafa, but that's not his MO. His MO is to charge forward with punches and eventually try to get those Muay Thai clinch knees going. With Justin Tafa, he's basically a Mark Hunt prototype. Like, you can tell he's super influenced by Mark Hunt, the leaping left hook, the uppercut, the walk-off KOs, big leg kicks. The takedown defense has always been an issue, but I think it's actually improving. And he's just a tough Samoan warrior, win, lose, or draw. Now, there have been, some shitty looks along the way, getting knocked out by Jorgen De Castro, getting, I think, 29-28 or 30-27 by Jared fucking Candera. Like, come on, man. But to his credit, Justin Tafa only came into the UFC at 3-0. So, like, when you're only 3-0 and you're fighting in the UFC, you're going to have to take these learning lessons under the magnifying glass, like we talked about with Jake Matthews. Except the difference with that is Matthews didn't come into the UFC at 3-0, but Matthews came into the UFC at 19 years old. Tafa came into the UFC at 3-0. So he's had to learn on the job. But I think he's better than what his record shows. and I enjoy watching him fight. So I think these two are going to have an honest stand-up scrap. I think someone's going to hit the deck, and I'm going to pick Justin Tafa to come out here, and I'm going to call a rear uppercut walk-off KO for Justin Tafa. Next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Tom Nolan, he's 9-1, taking on Charlie Campbell, who's 9-2. Currently, they got it Tom Nolan -150. The comeback on Charlie Campbell is +130. Nolan's 25, Campbell's 30. Nolan's 6'3", Campbell's 6 feet, but Nolan's only going to have a ½ inch reach advantage at 73 inches of reach. So this is one of the very best fights on the entire card. And this is literally one of those fights where you run it 10 times, you're probably going to see a different outcome each time. If they run it in Vegas, it's probably going to be a different outcome than if they run it in Perth, Western Australia. But Nolan's got the home field advantage on this one, man. He's not the one that has to make the huge flight. Has Campbell ever made a flight like that in his life? Probably not. And if y'all know how, long in advance Campbell came to Australia to acclimate, please let me know in the comments below. So that's like a big factor. Is Campbell going to be dealing with jet lag or not? Because I think Campbell is very, very talented. I think his hands are tremendous. I actually think that between these two, I think Campbell's the more technical guy, and possibly the more talented guy too. But the thing about it is Nolan is making massive leaps every single time you see him. What you got to understand about Tom Nolan is he's only 25 years old. He's just a kid in this game. He came into the UFC when he was like 22, 23. He's also had to learn on the job. But Nolan, his fighting style, I don't want to say a poor man's Carlos Condit or Tim Means, because that's not fair to Nolan, because he's only had 10 pro fights. So when you're talking about guys like Condit and Means, they ended up, retiring with Condit had over 40 fights. Tim Means got over 50 fights. So Nolan's got a long way to develop, but his style, the prototype of that style, is clearly influenced by Carlos Condit and Tim Means. He's long. He can switch stances. He's got devastating kicks. His punches are okay, but the thing about it is I like the way his punches set up his kicks. Also, he's got some sneaky stuff on the ground. A lot of people give him shit for that Alex Reyes fight because, look, Campbell knocked out Alex Reyes in the first round. But after that, Reyes came back and he fought Nolan. And people give Nolan a lot of heat for that performance. I don't. Look, was it an exciting fight? Not really, but it takes two to tango. And Alex Reyes was literally running away from Nolan the entire fight. And whenever Nolan would close the distance, Alex would just try to hug him against the fence. It was bro, these stall tactics are ridiculous, but you're still losing the fight 30-27. But the thing about Nolan is, being that age, you're going to see these leaps every single time. I felt like that last fight against Slava is the best he's looked up until this point. Now, backtracking a little bit to the Alex Reyes fight, because one thing I got to give Alex Reyes credit for, he's a Robert Drysdale black belt. In that third round, Nolan went for a standing Darce choke against a Robert Drysdale black belt. That was nice. And then in that first round against Slava, he also went for a Darce choke. Now, I was kind of upset he didn't finish it there. Now, credit to Slava, he was defending properly. He was going flat to his back, which when you're trying to defend a front choke such as a Darce, you have to either go flat on your stomach or flat on your back. If you stay on your side, you are going to either get tapped out or you're going to go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? So props to Slava. He had the proper defense to survive that Darce. But Nolan, I like the fact that when Slava, defended that Darce and got back up, Nolan wasn't fuck, I just emptied the clip trying to get this guy out of there. And now he's still in my face. No, Nolan ends up, securing that round, securing the next round. And then the third round, I think Slava won. But again, these are the kind of things, these are the kind of experiences, 3 rounds that you see from a kid like Nolan. He's going to come back here and you may see a completely different guy. With Campbell, again, very, very talented guy. I love his hands. And he's just well-rounded. I mean, that fight with Trevor Peek, he gave Trevor Peek a tour of the octagon, man. But if I have to kind of nitpick a little bit on Campbell, I have a suspicion that he might be chinny. Look, I know the Chris Duncan fight, he got knocked the you-know-what out, and that was what it was. Look, he just got super excited. He hurt the guy. That uppercut Campbell has is disgusting. I mean, he was just going back to the well over and over, and I think he thought he had the finish right there. Got a little careless, dropped his hands, got caught. But that's not why I think he's chinny. Obviously, look, when you get put to sleep like that, it's not going to help your chin meter. But in that fight with Trevor Peek, even though look, Campbell clearly won that fight. There's no debate about that whatsoever. But there were certain looks here and there when he'd get touched that, like, I feel like a better guy, like there were certain reactions Campbell had that I feel like a better guy is going to capitalize and possibly get Campbell out of there. But until you get Campbell to that point, he's hell on wheels to deal with. So this one is so tough for me to call. And I get why people are taking the dog shot on Campbell. I mean, he's a very good fighter. This is a very good matchup. I'm just not sure, man. I'm just really, really not sure about this one, man. I'm going to lean a little bit towards Nolan, though. I'm going to lean a little bit towards Nolan because I just think his awkward, kind of janky, long style is something that guys aren't too used to. I mean, when's the last time Campbell fought a 6'3" opponent that knows how to fight tall? And again, we talk about how Campbell's kind of chinny. Well, I got to bring this up too. Nolan's probably kind of chinny too, but is Nolan chinny or is Nolan cocky, right? Because like I told y'all, he came into the UFC when he was 23. So he fought Nick Mata. After he got that knockout against Bogdan Grad, dude, he definitely thought he was God's gift to fight. And he definitely thought, bro, I'm the longest guy in this weight class. These guys can't do anything to me. Like, did you see that knockout? Like, he probably thought he was invincible. So you could see in that Nick Mata fight, Nick Mata, look, Nick Mata might not win every fight, but Nick Mata fights every fight. And Nick Mata has an extensive highlight reel of devastating knockouts that he's compiled over the years outside the UFC and in the UFC. So it's like, I don't hold that against him, but then the very next fight against Victor Martinez, he got dropped too. So I was kind of like, I don't know, man. Is he chinny? Is he cocky? What's the deal? Because the next fight, well, let's not, shit. Should we bring up that Alex Reyes kind of hurt him in that first round too? But that fight against Slava, who's a way better striker than all these guys, he wasn't getting rocked all over the place. It was a much better look. So I don't know. I feel like the jury's kind of out on Nolan. I'm still kind of deciding if I think, there's a durability issue or if he was just kind of, being an arrogant young kid. Whereas with Campbell, I have a sneaking suspicion that he might be a bit of a front runner. Obviously, that remains to be seen as both of their UFC careers play out. But again, this is a very tough one for me to call, so I understand why people are taking the dog. But I'm going to go with Nolan to come out here, keep this long. And look, I'm not saying it's going to be some kind of clean sweep, some kind of knockout. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think it's going to be a serious fight. I'm going to lean a little bit towards Nolan. Next up in the light heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Navajo Stirling, he's 7-0, taking on Rodolfo Bellato, who's 12-1 currently. They got it Navajo Stirling minus 235. The comeback on Rodolfo Bellato is plus 200. Bellato's 29, Stirling's 27. Stirling's 6'4", Bellato's 6'3", and Stirling's going to have a 1.5-inch reach advantage at 79 inches of reach. So Navajo Stirling, very, very interesting prospect at 205 pounds. I got to admit, I wasn't on the Navajo Stirling train in his Contender Series fight, in his UFC debut. I mean, don't get me wrong. I picked him to win those fights, but I'm saying, like, I thought this guy was nothing special at all. But that last fight against Ivan Erslan, man, and when you kind of look at the chronological order of his fights, he is improving, man. This guy is making big leaps every single fight. I think what people got to remember about Stirling is he's only 7-0, man. He came into the UFC at 5-0. He's green, but he's very, very talented. Obviously, y'all know he's a city kickboxing guy, and he's super long, good hands, good calf kicks. I feel like his takedown defense has been getting a lot better, and he's like a smart, cerebral fighter. He's also tough as nails. The only thing I got to kind of criticize him for is some of his spin attacks are kind of suspect, man. Like in that Tuco Tokos fight, that shit was super slow. Now, it was a little bit faster against Ivan Erslan, but like one of these days, if he does not fix up how he sets up these spins, someone might make him pay for that. I mentioned how the spins are kind of slow. Guess who else is kind of slow? Rodolfo Bellato. I mean, Rodolfo Bellato, look, this guy's a Brazilian marauder. He goes forward. He loves those overhand rights, the left hooks, big calf kicks. He's also a Nogueira black belt, which is serious. But the thing about it is, dude, he's so damn slow. He's so hittable. He's so chinny. And like Navajo Stirling, look, I know people are going to be like, bro, this guy couldn't even finish Tuco Tokos. I get it. Now, part of me is like, he kind of low-key did finish Tuco Tokos. I don't know what the hell the ref was waiting for, And then in that Ivan Erslan fight, he low-key could have got a stoppage in that third round too. It's like the refs don't want to stop the fights with Stirling. But I think that one of these performances, whether it's this Saturday or the next fight or whatever, Stirling's going to have a breakout performance where he looks like, hey, this could be a future top 15 guy. So I really, really like him. And obviously, you know, with the experience of Bellato and Stirling being kind of young and Bellato's Nogueira black belt, you don't want Bellato on top of you. You don't want to eat Bellato calf kicks. You don't want to eat his punches. But the thing about it is, man, I don't think Bellato wants to eat anything coming back at him from Stirling. I think Stirling is going to rock him with a jab, with a left hook. And I think that, you know, Bellato for his calf kicks. Well, now you're going to see Stirling coming out here and chopping down the calf kicker. And ultimately, I think Navajo Stirling is going to come out here and get his first UFC knockout against Rodolfo Bellato. Next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Andre Petroski, who's 13-4, taking on Cam Rowston, who's 12-3. Currently, they got a Petroski minus 170. The comeback on Rowston's plus 145. Petroski's 34, Rowston's 30. Rowston's 6'3", Petroski's 6 feet. I actually think Petroski's more like 5'9". I've stood next to him. He ain't no 6 feet. Rowston has a 75-inch reach, which is 2 inches longer than Petroski's 73-inch reach. So this is a really, really interesting fight. So shout out Cam Rowston. You know, we picked him as an underdog on Dana White's Contender Series. One of my picks that didn't get caught with the first punch. You know what I'm saying, man? But look, shout out to Rowston for that performance. I thought it was a great performance, and I also felt like it was a big improvement from some of the stuff I've seen on the regional scene and in his Torres Finney fight. But the Torres Finney fight is going to prove to be a great experience for this guy. Like, you know that, hey, some guys are just going to want to grind you out. And Petroski's probably going to want to do the same thing. Look, Petroski's a very, very talented grappler, man. I mean, do y'all remember that choke he hit on Nick Maximov? That shit was disgusting. And also, from time to time, when you start to count out a guy like Petroski, he'll sneakily put together a little win streak. My issue with Petroski is that if he's not doing successful front running, I do not think that he's the kind of guy that can overcome adversity. I don't think he's the toughest. And I think that if he feels like you're, you know, a step ahead of him, he'll mentally check out in the fight. Now, this is interesting because Rowston, technically, I don't think he's that bad. It's just that he's kind of on the slower, kind of not that athletic side. So I definitely think he's going to get taken down. But the thing about it is, if he can get back up and make Petroski work and start mixing in some knees, and every time they get back up, just pepper him a little bit, land a little bit more damage, that can possibly offset the takedowns of Petroski. I mean, that's assuming Petroski isn't just laying on him or isn't submitting him, which maybe could happen. I mean, like I said, Petroski's a very, very talented grappler. It's just Petroski is what I like to refer to as a hot and cold fighter, a hit or miss fighter. Sometimes, like I said, this guy looks fantastic. Other times you're scratching your head like he knocks himself out, charging headfirst into a dude's hip. You know what I'm saying, man? Like other times, like he won't even shoot for a takedown. So you just don't know what to expect. You'll see his fight with Josh Fremd, where each guy lands like 20 significant strikes in 3 rounds. You're like, this is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. So it comes down to Rowston, man. Like, this fight comes down to Rowston. We know the blueprint on Andre Petroski. We know how good Andre Petroski's grappling is. Can Cam Rowston make him pay, land some damage, and have the cumulative volume when they're on the feet? Have those big moments, right? Like, you might get taken down and grind it out for 2 minutes, but when you get back up, can you hurt Petroski with a knee to the body? Can you start landing some high kicks? Can you get your combinations going? Or is that threat of the takedown going to completely shut down the game of Cam Rowston? I mean, I think that's what it comes down to. But I think the best version of Petroski should be a favorite and probably wins. But Petroski, to me, is hit or miss. He's 50-50. He's hot and cold. And simply put, I just don't trust him. So for that reason, I'm going to actually go out on a limb here and take Cam Rowston for this upset. Next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Jonathan Micallef, he's 8-1, taking on Oban Elliott, who's 12-3. Currently, they got it a pick him with a slight lean on Oban Elliott. He's minus 115. Jonathan Micallef is plus 100. Oban's 27. Micallef is 26. Both men are 6 feet tall. But interestingly enough, Micallef is going to have a 5-inch reach advantage in the spot. So, yeah, listen, there's a lot to unpack about this fight because, as y'all know, Oban Elliott had like a bed-shitting performance his last time out against Ko. And kind of a common theme we've been talking about on this card is dudes that have to pay dues and dudes that have to, you know, get humbled and then they come back better, right? Like we talked about it with Tom Nolan. We talked about it with Jake Matthews, with Jimmy the Brute Crute, with some of these other guys. And I think that, I think Oban Elliott kind of drank his own Kool-Aid a little bit too much after that Basil Hafez fight. I think he thought he was God's gift to fighting. And look, I'm not saying that if he ran it back with Ko, that Ko wouldn't win. I'm just saying, was that not the most pathetic defensiveless performance you've ever seen in your life? Like, what the hell was that, man? So I assume that Oban Elliott's going to look a little bit better than that here. Now with Micallef, I got to admit, he really impressed me that last fight because I was not expecting that kind of performance. Now, with Micallef, he's long, he's awkward, he's janky. He's got some big kicks and body lock takedowns. That's what he's known for, man. He's a super awkward, goofy guy to fight. He's just tough because, like, he's not the fastest guy. He's not the most athletic guy. He doesn't hit the hardest, but he's one of these guys with a lot of heart, a lot of spirit, and he's going to bite down on that mouthpiece and fight hard. But one thing about it, I talked about the body lock takedowns of Micallef. I think Oban Elliott has very underrated takedown defense. Look, let's put that fight with Ko on the back burner, man, because, like, again, I'm not saying Ko wouldn't beat him the majority of the time, but I'm just saying, like, that was clearly an off night and clearly not the Oban. Clearly not the best version of Oban. But historically speaking, Oban's got really good takedown defense, man. I felt like in that fight against Preston Parsons, the Basil Hafez fight, like, I like Oban Elliott's takedown defense. And, man, if his whizzer is on point, if everything's on point against this body lock, that's going to be a bit of a stand-up fight. You know, I definitely give the kicking edge to Micallef. Punching, I mean, look, my thing with Oban is sometimes the striking defense leaves a lot to be desired. I've seen him rocked by not the best guys, and that's always going to be a concern. But all that being said, I think these guys are going to be head-to-head, but I think Oban Elliott is slightly more well-rounded, and I think he's going to get back on track here. And also, he's not like minus 400 or whatever he was last time. Like, this is kind of a market overreaction, right? If that fight with Ko never happened and this was his next matchup, Elliott would be like a minus 200 favorite here. Now, I'm not saying he should be that price because obviously he pulled a stunt in his last fight, and Micallef is better than I thought. So maybe Micallef gets this upset, but I'm gonna pick Oban Elliott to get back on track here. Next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Jamie Mullarkey, he's 17-8, taking on Rolando Bedoya, who's 14-4. Currently, they got it Mullarkey minus 120, Bedoya plus 100. So Mullarkey's 31. Bedoya's 28. Mullarkey's 6 feet. Bedoya's 5'11. Bedoya's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage at 75 inches of reach. So this is Bedoya's second fight at 155 pounds in the UFC. You know, he had 2 fights at 70s against Chaos and against Song Keenan. And then most recently, he lost that fight to Jai Herbert at 55s. Now he's coming back against Mullarkey. Shout out Mullarkey, man. He's a longtime vet. He's a lot of fun to watch. You have to be on a certain level to beat a guy like Mullarkey. But, man, I got to say, Mullarkey's chin is Mullarkey. You know what I mean? And, like, I like the guy a lot, but, man, his chin just lets him down. And this is not something that's only been going on in the UFC. I mean, now that he's getting a little bit older, it's really starting to show its ugly head. But I'm saying, back in the day, dude, y'all have to go on YouTube and pull up that Alexander Volkanovski KO against Mullarkey. Look, I know Volk's the champ and stuff at featherweight, but I'm just saying, Volk is known for being like a point fighter in the UFC. Volk starched Mullarkey with this devastating overhand right that, to this day, to quote Deontay Wilder, I thank God that Volk had the restraint to not throw that follow-up. You know, Volk isn't a piece of shit like Hobocop who threw that follow-up on Jack Hermanson. Volk is actually, you know, an honorable human being. So, of course, he didn't throw a follow-up on the lifeless body of Mullarkey like Hobocop's bum ass did against Jack Hermanson, you know? So, shout out Volk. But the reason I was bringing that up is because the chin stuff has been going on since before the UFC for Mullarkey, and now it's like happening every fight, and it's happening to dudes in like lower weight classes. Like, yo, what weight class is that dude Muhammad Naimov in? He's definitely a weight class below, and he's out here starching this guy. Now, the thing about it is Bedoya doesn't have that much power. Bedoya only has 4 knockouts on his record. Now, he is a shooter box guy. He comes from a great gym, trains with great people. My issue with Bedoya is he's just kind of goofy. He's not athletic, but like, he is a tough dude and he will try hard. And maybe he can get his 5th knockout here. Like, do you all remember that fight between that kid? I think his name's Fernando Padilla. He fought against Julian Erosa, and going into that fight, Padilla only had like 4 knockouts on his record. So everyone was like, bro, this guy's not known for knocking anyone out. Julian Erosa should have an easy matchup here. Well, Bedoya ain't known for knocking anyone out. So Mullarkey should have an easy matchup, right? I don't know, man. MMA does not make sense. And I think that Bedoya is going to come out here and knock out Jamie Mullarkey. Next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Colby Thicknesse, he's 7-1, taking on Josias Musasa, who's 8-1. Currently, they got it Musasa -150. The comeback on Colby Thicknesse is +130. Both men are 26. Musasa is an inch taller at 5'8", and he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage at 74 inches of reach. So very, very interesting matchup in the bantamweight division. You know, both guys are 0-1 in the UFC. They're trying to get back on track. And I guess my question here for the fans is, are you down with the Thicknesse? Because for me, I'm not that down with the Thicknesse, man. I mean, like, I respect the kid. I think that he's one of these kind of like awkward Gumby type guys that can just like take an ass whooping, and if you start to gas out on him, he'll still be walking forward type ordeal. But like, he's not athletic. He's not physically imposing. He doesn't hit that hard, and he's very, very hittable. Now on the other side with Musasa, listen, I think the ceiling is very, very high. I mean, this is a serious African prospect, a great athlete. He swings big, like, and his technique doesn't have to be that great because like his natural God-given abilities can carry him through. Like, this guy can get like taken down and he'll just break all the rules to get back up to his feet. Now, I know that last fight was a stun of the year candidate against Carlos Vera, who like, I hope they let my boy Malcolm Wellmaker finish Carlos Vera while he's still on his first contract. You know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, Musasa should have won that fight. But again, man, look, in his case, I'm not going to say that Musasa thought he was God's gift to fighting and he was cocky, he was arrogant. I'm just going to say that he's just green, bro. Like, I heard that he only started training in the United States in the last year. Up until then, he was training in Africa, and like, who was he training with, man? You know what I'm saying, man? So it's good that he's taking things seriously, moving to the States and doing things the right way, because like I said, the potential and the talent are there. So to me, this fight just comes down to, is Musasa going to pull another stunt again or not? Because like, look, Thicknesse might actually have better technique than Musasa, but like, Musasa can break rules. He doesn't have to have better technique than you. He can just hit you once and you go out, or he can break rules, like I said. So, you know, I think that athleticism is a massive factor in this matchup. And I do think that just the raw horsepower of Musasa is enough to beat the very, very tough Mr. Thicknesse. So I respect Thicknesse. Look, I know he's Alexander Volkanovski's punching bag, and I know he's a tough guy that's dreamt of being in the UFC his entire life. But unless Musasa pulls an absolute stunt for the second time in a row, I think Musasa has a chance to come out here and do some brutal things to Mr. Thicknesse. So I'm going to go Josias Musasa to get his first UFC win. Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between Loma Lookboonmee. She's 10-3, taking on Alexia Thainara, who's 12-1. Currently, they got it Alexia Thainara -230. The comeback on Loma Lookboonmee is +195. Loma's 29, Thainara's 27. Thainara's 3 inches taller at 5'4", and she's going to have a decent reach advantage here at 67 inches of reach. Man, I mean, dude, a 5.5-inch reach advantage, that is no joke, especially in this fight, which I think will take place majority of the time on the feet. Look, Loma Lookboonmee, man, she's been in the UFC a lot longer than a lot of people expected, and she's kind of like a cult favorite. You know, if you're a hardcore fan, you like Loma Lookboonmee because she's a super exciting Muay Thai fighter, but like, she's super short. She's a small, kind of unassuming fighter, but like, dude, if you're not on the level that she's on, I mean, she will bust you up, man. She will straight up light your ass up. And not to mention, obviously the Thai is on point, but what about those Thai trips, man? She can hit you with all kinds of unorthodox takedowns, get on top of you. She's rounding out her game. She's got tons of experience. There's really a lot to like about Loma Lookboonmee. Now, on the other side with Alexia Thainara, there's also a lot to like about her. You know, I went back and I listened to my breakdown of her, you know, for the Molly McCann fight. And the thing I said was that her confidence really, really stands out, because when you watch her Contender Series fight, she did some things that certain people would refer to as maybe bonehead mistakes, like this. Like, she would take down that opponent and then she'd let them back up, right? And I know some people thought that was a fight IQ thing. I don't think so. I think that was a confidence thing. I think that was like, all right, I'm going to take you down. Now get your ass back up. I'm going to whoop you on the feet. Then I'm going to take you down and whoop you there. I'm just going to beat your ass everywhere the fight goes. I think that was her mindset. So, yeah, I mean, I think she just really, really believes in herself. Her Muay Thai is also on point. Look, she might not have the extensive background that Loma does, but make no mistake about it, Thainara can strike, and then she can also mix in her grappling too. She's a little bit more physical, and she seems like she could be possible future top 15 fighter. So of course, no one's exempt from that first UFC L, and this ended up being, you know, a split decision type fight. I would not be surprised. Like, nothing surprises me anymore. But all that being said, I think Thainara is the much more talented fighter, the more physical fighter, and she's riding high with confidence right now. So for that reason, I'm going to pick Alexia Thainara to come out here and win this fight. So I know there's 2 more fights, and the Luana Carolina versus Montague fight. Look, I got to keep it a buck with y'all. I went to that site, like Watch MMA Full or whatever, to watch the Montague fights, and like, dude, that shit was fucking down. I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, yo, if y'all got footage of Montague, drop it in the comments, man, because like, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you guys on a breakdown. Like, I know the little dynamic of it. I mean, I've seen her fight before. She's a grappler. It's just like, I need a refresher on how good her grappling actually is. And like, I clicked on this website and, you know, it's giving me some bullshit. It wasn't working. So I didn't get to tape this fight. It's unfortunate. Obviously, Luana's going to look to keep it standing. Montague's going to look to get it to the mat. I didn't get to watch how good Montague's grappling is, so I don't have an opinion on that fight at the moment. And then the other fight, the heavyweight fight, I'm going to just put it to y'all like this. I'm from Atlanta. I ain't picking no grown man named Alicia to win a UFC fight. Now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC Perth? My friends, I think that the fight to watch is going to surprise y'all. And it's actually the featured bout between Jenkins and Taveras. Number one, they're both strikers, heavy kicks from Jenkins, big hands from Taveras. But number two, the narrative stuff. I mean, Jenkins is coming off not just a little, you know, meniscus tear or something like that, not to downplay that, but like, dude, air leak in your thyroid cartilage. Like, again, like, bro, I'm going to be paying attention to how you look in this fight. And I think it's going to be super exciting while it lasts. So for that reason, Jenkins versus Taveras is my fight to watch. So now the question is, who is my fighter to watch? My friends, my fighter to watch is the undefeated Navajo Stirling. Listen, I've been seeing incremental improvements every single fight. This guy's got less than 10 pro fights, and I think he's very, very talented. I think you're going to see a breakout performance. I think this guy's going to come out here and get his first UFC knockout. I know he's gotten close the last 2 times, but I think third time is going to be the charm. And I think Navajo Stirling is going to make the kind of statement that makes people be like, hey, this could be a future top 15 guy. So for that reason, Navajo Stirling is my fighter to watch. Well, my friends, we did it. It's going down this Saturday in Perth, Western Australia. I want to thank you all so much for all your support. Hey, smash that like button, leave me a comment, and please subscribe. Once I get to 10K subscribers, I'm giving out some free signed Malcolm Wellmaker merch. So all you got to do is subscribe. And the sooner I get to 10K, the sooner I'm giving away that signed merch. So thank you all so much for your support. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.